When you think of Japan, what's the first thing that pops into your head? I bet you're picturing cutting-edge tech, unbelievable food, and these perfectly immaculate cities, right? Well, that's the image the world sees. But today, we're going to pull back the curtain and look at a reality that's been very deliberately scrubbed from view. So what is being hidden? Sometimes just a 10-minute walk from the super busy tourist spots in cities like Osaka and Kyoto. The answer? Well, it's a lot more complicated and a lot more revealing than you might think, right? This is the Japan we all know and see on social media. It's a country that's famous for its order and cleanliness. It's a huge part of its national brand. Tourists are just blown away by a society where it feels like every single detail is perfectly managed. But that pristine image is kept up, at least in part, by actively hiding what doesn't fit the picture. Behind brand new fences and locked gates, whole communities are being pushed out of sight, their stories silenced, and their very existence denied. Okay, so to really understand how this is happening, we need to go to Nishinari Ward in Osaka. It's the site of Japan's largest and most infamous slum. The transformation here it's just startling. Just a couple of years ago, the area was known for this mountain of garbage that was piled up as a form of protest. Today, the streets are clean, sure, but they're also sterile, lined with new walls and fences. The problem wasn't solved. It was simply covered up. So why this sudden, super aggressive cleanup? Well, the answer is the 2025 World Expo. With the eyes of the entire world about to turn to Osaka, the city is pushing through this massive gentrification effort to present a flawless image, even if that means pushing out its most vulnerable residents. And this quote right here, it just cuts right to the heart of it. According to a local guide who's actually experienced homelessness here, the goal was never to help. The city just wants the problem to be invisible to tourists and investors. It's all about optics, not actual solutions. And here's the real kicker. To understand how Nishinari even came to be, we have to look back at the last World Expo that shaped its destiny. This whole cycle kicked off back in 1970. Osaka's first World Expo created this massive demand for labor, pulling in thousands of workers who ended up staying after the event was over. That's how Japan's largest day laborer district was formed. But as the economy changed, the jobs vanished, leading to decades of poverty and even 24 different riots. And now, the very same event that created this community is being used as the reason to tear it apart. Just try to picture this. Up to 30,000 people, mostly laborers, crammed into a tiny 2-kilometer radius. This kind of concentration didn't just create economic hardship, it created a stigma. The area got labeled as dangerous and undesirable, which cut it off from the rest of Osaka and created this really vicious cycle of neglect. But here's the thing. That reputation of Nishinari as some violent, crime-ridden slum is now decades out of date. So let's look at the much more complex reality of what life is actually like there today. Okay, the economic struggle is absolutely real. A staggering 25% of Nishinari residents receive public assistance. Now compare that to the national average of just 1.6%. The poverty here is deep and it is very real. But this is where that old stereotype really starts to fall apart. The rioting day laborers from back in the day, they're now mostly men over 65. The area is pretty quiet, and surprisingly, you'll even find a local kindergarten with little kids walking around. The danger is more of a historical ghost story than a current reality. You know, tourists who actually go there often find the reputation kind of baffling. As this one French visitor put it, what Japan calls a dangerous slum can feel way safer than neighborhoods in many other countries. So why would a tourist even stay here? Well, for some, it's the incredibly low prices. We're talking $5 hostels and 50-cent drinks. For others, it's a search for a more real, untamed Japan, something away from the polished tourist trail. And, sometimes, when the rest of the city is completely booked, it's just the only option left. This story of hiding poverty isn't just a Nishinari thing. We see the same pattern of erasure playing out in other Japanese cities, and it's often rooted in a much, much deeper history of social class. To really get this, you need to know a term, birakumen. Historically, this was an outcast group in Japan's old feudal system, pushed into impure work like butchery. And even though the class system is long gone, the stigma has persisted for generations.
In Kyoto, of all places, Japan's cultural capital, a historic Brokumin neighborhood is facing the same fate. Just a short walk from the famous Kyoto Tower, an entire community is being fenced off and redeveloped, pushing out families who have lived there for generations.
The erasure is sometimes literal. The historical name for the heart of Nishinari, Kamagasaki, has been scrubbed from most official maps. It's a really powerful tool of invisibility. If a place has no name, it's a lot easier to pretend it doesn't exist. Ultimately, this isn't just a story about Japan. It's a story about what all modern cities choose to show the world and what they choose to hide.
This thought from a Taiwanese author just nails the feeling of shock. In a lot of countries, poverty is visible. But in Japan, the effort to maintain that pristine image makes its discovery all the more jarring. It's a hidden poverty, which makes you ask even deeper questions about the society that's hiding it. This issue really clashes with these big global goals. The UN calls for reducing inequalities, but the gap between trendy Osaka and Nishinari is only getting wider. It calls for sustainable communities, but these plans are destroying the social networks that vulnerable people depend on to survive. This all really boils down to a question of spatial justice. Who has the right to the city and whose existence is just deemed inconvenient? And it kind of forces us to look at our own communities and ask, what or who is being hidden where you live?
Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we help you cut through the noise to get truly well-informed. Now, when you picture Japan, what comes to mind? For many of us, I think it's those pristine streets, impeccable order, that almost unbelievable sense of safety you visit, right? And you rarely, if ever, encounter visible poverty.
Yeah, it's a stark contrast to what you might see in many other countries where social challenges can be much more out in the open.
Exactly.
What's fascinating here, though, is that while Japan does project this incredibly polished image, that isn't always the full picture. There's a jarring reality.
Okay.
Social problems do exist, but they are often, let's say, strategically hidden from view.
And that's exactly what we're diving into today. This deep dive will explore Japan's hidden poverty problem, focusing on specific, almost unbelievable areas right in its biggest cities, Osaka and Kyoto.
Right.
Our mission, really, they unpack how these huge global cities manage their carefully curated image, what challenging realities get swept under the rug, and, the very real human cost behind these efforts.
And we're drawing from quite a range of sources for this. Some really revealing YouTube videos that pull back that tourist facade.
Yeah, those were striking.
And also some insightful articles looking into urban development and these complex social issues.
Okay, so let's unpack this.
Yeah.
We all kind of picture Japan as this clean, tidy, well-maintained society. It's a perception reinforced by so many of our own experiences, I think.
Definitely.
So it's quite a shock, then, to discover an area like Nishinari in Osaka, which feels, frankly, like a different world entirely.
And that invisibility, it isn't an accident, it's quite deliberate. The Japanese government actively works to maintain a specific image, for tourism.
Ah, right, for the tourists.
Which makes it incredibly difficult for visitors to see the struggles of residents, some of whom live just, a few blocks from major attractions.
Wow.
And beyond that, there's also a strong social culture that tends to avoid directly discussing poverty or social disadvantage.
So it's kind of taboo.
Yeah, almost. It makes these issues even harder for both locals and visitors to truly acknowledge. We actually see similar patterns elsewhere, too.
Like where?
Well, like in other developed cities, say Taipei, where authorities also tend to carefully manage how disadvantages are presented to the public eye.
So it's not just an oversight, it's an active, almost cultural concealment. That's a powerful point. Where in Osaka do we see this strategy most clearly at play?
Okay, the prime example is Nishinari Ward, specifically an area known historically as Kamagasaki in Osaka.
Kamagasaki.
Yeah, and it presents an almost unbelievable contrast. You're literally just 10 minutes from major tourist attractions.
10 minutes.
Or maybe 2 kilometers from Osaka's largest tourist spot, and suddenly you're just in a completely different world.
That's hard to picture.
What's even more telling is that Kamagasaki's name, it's often wiped off official maps.
Really?
Yeah, and it rarely appears in mainstream media, all because of its social image and these ongoing urban development plans. It's almost as if they want to erase its existence.
It's truly hard to reconcile that image, blight and crime, with the pristine Japan we think we know, especially when it's so close to the main attractions.
Right.
So what's the story here? What's the historical trajectory? that led to such a profound divide right in the heart of Osaka?
Well, stepping back, the roots of this situation, they actually go back quite a way to the 1970 World Expo in Osaka.
The Exo.
Yeah. To support the massive construction and infrastructure needed for the Expo, thousands of young workers from impoverished areas across Japan were brought in, day laborers mostly.
Right, for the buildup.
Exactly. But once the Expo ended, these men didn't return home. Instead, they stayed, concentrating in Nishunari, which was then known as Nishiarden Chiku.
Ah, okay.
And this concentration quickly turned the area into a hub for day laborers, but also, unfortunately, earned it the reputation as the most dangerous and gang-infested place in all of Japan.
Wow. And the sources, they mentioned the history of conflict there is incredibly intense.
Absolutely.
Something like 24 riots, where laborers clashed violently with police,
Yeah.
almost burning down the city.
Yeah, it got incredibly heated. 24 documented riots where laborers fought police. It almost led to the burning down of Osaka City, like you said.
Yeah.
And it's not just ancient history either.
No.
The last major one was as recent as 2008.
2008. Okay. So that brings us more towards the present. How does that struggle look today?
Well, today the struggle continues, but there's been a significant demographic shift. Those day laborers from the 70s, 80s, 90s, they almost all retired now.
Right, aging population.
Exactly. Meaning most residents today are over 65. The area is now home to about 1,300 homeless people, and a staggering 25% of its residents rely on public assistance.
25%.
Yeah, and to put that in perspective for you, that's vastly higher than Japan's national average, which is just 1.6%.
Wow, 1.6 versus 25. That really underscores the deep, entrenched nature of the poverty there.
It absolutely does.
So this isn't just about an aging population then. It sounds like it's also about a massive economic decline that disproportionately hit this community.
Precisely. From the 1970s onwards, Japan's manufacturing sector started shifting overseas. And automation, drastically reduced the demand for low-skilled labor.
The kind of work these day laborers did.
Exactly. This left many Kamagasaki day laborers effectively unemployed. They were forced into this desperate existence, relying on odd jobs, maybe scavenging for recycling, or trying to subsist on minimal social welfare benefits.
And you can imagine how that, over decades, just spirals. Worsening health, alcoholism.
Widespread alcoholism, drug abuse, intense social isolation, all of it.
And the physical signs of this neglect. The sources mention some really stark examples.
They are truly heartbreaking. For instance, the area's welfare center, which was a vital lifeline for so many, it closed in 2019. Said it didn't meet earthquake standards.
Oh, wow. And that caused protests.
Yeah, it sparked protests by these aging day laborers who, in their frustration, they started throwing trash outside the closed center.
Okay.
And over the next 5 years, that spot just grew and grew. It became Osaka's biggest illegal dumping ground. People from all over the city were apparently bringing old appliances, garbage there to avoid disposal fees.
Unbelievable.
And you can still see these dangerous abandoned houses, their roofs literally falling apart onto the street. Many windows have bars because of the perceived danger.
Right. And there was that detail about the sign.
Oh, yeah. That particularly chilling detail from one source, seeing the word osu, which means kill, written on a signboard.
Kill.
Yeah.
That's incredibly stark and truly unsettling, especially given Japan's reputation for safety. It paints such a vivid picture of desperation, doesn't it?
It really does. It's incredibly unusual for Japan and speaks volumes about the desperation in the area.
So given these entrenched issues, the sudden cleanup you mentioned earlier must have been a huge shock to anyone who knew the area.
Absolutely. Just last month, apparently, they cleaned up all the garbage, moved the homeless people away from that central area where they were living.
Moved them where?
That's the question, isn't it? And they put up physical barriers, too. Areas boarded up with walls, gates. One source even mentioned seeing barbed wire on a bench or ledge, specifically so no one could sit there.
Barbed wire to stop people resting. Wow. What prompted such a drastic and seemingly overnight change?
Well, this brings up an important question. Why this sudden, drastic cleanup? And the ironic reason, it turns out, is that the Osaka Expo is returning.
No. The same expo.
The very event that helped create this slum by bringing in thousands of laborers decades ago is now serving as the catalyst for its dismantling.
That's quite the irony.
It is. And this closure of the welfare center, these urban redevelopment plans, they raise serious concerns about what we call spatial justice.
You mentioned spatial justice. Could you quickly elaborate on what that means in this context?
Yeah.
For our listeners? It sounds like it's crucial here.
Certainly. Yeah, spatial justice refers to the fair and equitable distribution of resources, services, opportunities across different geographic areas.
Oh, yeah.
And importantly, how that distribution impacts the social groups living there. So here, it highlights whether the redevelopment is truly just for the residents.
Right. Are they being offered viable alternatives?
Well,
Support.
exactly. Or is it simply moving the problem elsewhere? Risking further marginalizing these already vulnerable people by, displacing them from their established communities and lifelines.
And what's truly concerning is that this isn't an isolated incident, is it?
No, not at all.
There's a parallel story unfolding in Kyoto, just 10 minutes from Kyoto Station, in one of Japan's historically most taboo places.
That's right. An area once home to around 10,000 Burakumin, Japan's historical untouchables, and thousands of Koreans as well who faced generations of forced segregation.
Man, now.
Now, similar gentrification is happening. The government is actively forcing them out to develop shopping malls, tourist hotels.
So the clear, unspoken message from both Osaka and Kyoto seems to be, well, they don't necessarily want to solve poverty or get people off the street.
They just want them out of sight.
Out of sight. The problem, as our sources highlight, is simply being scattered rather than solved.
Precisely.
Now, let's talk about the tourist paradox here. Because despite Kamagasaki's reputation, some foreign tourists actually stay in Nishinari.
It's true. They're drawn by these incredibly cheap hostels, like $5 a night, right in the heart of Osaka.
$5? Wow.
And super inexpensive food, too. Okonomiyaki for 100 yen, that's less than $1. Drinks for less than 50 cents.
So some tourists are there just for the price.
Many seem to be completely unaware of the area's dark history. Some probably just couldn't find other accommodation. And then maybe some are actively seeking a, quote, real Japan experience that goes beyond the polished facade.
The authentic experience.
Yeah. And you see these unique convenience stores there, stocked with an abundance of cheap alcohol, and even handwritten notes asking for money sometimes. It's a really strange blend of tourism and destitution.
It truly highlights the conflicting realities, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And when you look at the different perspectives, some foreign visitors find it, not a problem.
Like the person from France.
Exactly, remarking that it's much worse in my country, yet local Japanese people are often deeply worried. There's that anecdote of a husband sending worried messages every 5 minutes to his wife staying there.
That's quite a contrast.
It is. And what's also quite surprising and sort of poignant is the presence of a kindergarten right in the area.
The kindergarten. Amidst all that.
Yeah, a stark symbol of innocence and vulnerability in such harsh surroundings.
So if we try to connect this to the bigger picture, what does this all mean for us? This hidden poverty in Japan, it isn't just some local anomaly, is it?
Not at all. It directly connects to broader global challenges, particularly the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. The SDGs. Okay.
Osaka's experience unfortunately reflects these in some pretty stark ways.
How so? Let's take SDG 1, no poverty.
Okay, looking at SDG 1. What's truly insightful here is how Japan's highly developed economy, despite its outward prosperity, still grapples with these fundamental challenges of poverty.
Right, it's not just about income.
Exactly. Nishinari shows us it's not just about absolute income levels, but about hidden welfare dependency, social exclusion, right within a wealthy nation. It shows that economic growth alone doesn't just eliminate deep-seated poverty.
Especially when it's actively concealed.
Precisely. It challenges our global assumptions about what no poverty truly looks like.
Okay, and what about SDG 8, decent work and economic growth?
Well, we clearly see the profound lack of job security for these day laborers over decades, but it also maybe highlights a broader issue in Osaka, which is the polarized career choices for its youth.
Well, some reports suggest many young people feel pressured towards stable, but perhaps less creative or fulfilling paths, partly due to underlying economic anxieties. It underscores these deep urban labor market inequalities that can exist even in a thriving economy.
That connects to SDG 10 too, doesn't it? Reduced inequalities.
Directly. Yeah, urban development in Osaka, while presenting itself as progress, often coexists with the stark marginalization of impoverished areas. These redevelopment projects, like in Nishinari and Kyoto,
They risk displacing people.
they risk displacing vulnerable groups, potentially exacerbating social and geographical disparities. The contrast between a vibrant youth culture hub like Osaka's Amerikamura and struggling Nishinari is a really clear example of that uneven resource distribution.
Right, and persistent inequality within the same city.
Exactly.
Then there's SDG 11, sustainable cities and communities.
Yeah, Osaka faces this critical challenge. How do you promote tourism and urban renewal while also protecting the housing rights and crucial social networks of vulnerable groups?
Because things like affordable lodging, community services in places like Nishinari, they're actual lifelines for people.
They are absolute lifelines, and losing them without genuine alternatives would severely impact social stability and, frankly, the very notion of a truly sustainable community for all residents.
Finally, SDG 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions. How does that fit?
Well, Japan's social policies regarding poverty often seem to lack transparency and robust public discussion.
Which silences people.
It effectively silences marginalized voices. And while NGOs and local volunteers do provide essential support in Nishinari food, shelter, medical care, incredible work,
Right.
our sources stress that systematic policy reforms, at a governmental level, are still critically insufficient. This lack of open dialogue hinders real progress towards justice for these communities.
So there you have it, the vibrant, prosperous image Japan projects to the world. It stands in stark contrast to these hidden realities of concentrated poverty and profound social challenges just lurking beneath the surface. And urban development, while often presented as positive progress, a necessary step for economic growth, it frequently comes at a significant cost.
The cost of displacing and further marginalizing its most vulnerable communities.
Yeah. So it leaves us with a difficult question, doesn't it?
It does.
When cities actively work to conceal their social challenges just to maintain a particular image, what responsibility do we have as citizens, visitors, maybe policymakers, to look beyond that facade?
And maybe ask, how can societies truly build sustainable and equitable communities when they seem unwilling to openly and honestly address the struggles of their most vulnerable residents?
It's a complex question, and definitely one worth pondering long after this deep dive ends.